Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this special election update of the 700 Club. It's an amazing election. It's simply amazing. But I have with us John Waggy, who gave us an analysis as our staff got together yesterday to figure this thing out. And I just want to give you a picture of what's happening and why it's happening. Each candidate had locked in so many electoral votes. Trump could count on the South, he could count on Texas, he could count on a certain number of states given. Hillary Clinton could count on New York, she could count on California, she could count on Washington and Oregon, she could count on New Mexico and a few other states. They were locked in. So there were so many states that were considered battlegrounds. The state, for example, of Pennsylvania, the state of North Carolina, the state of Florida, and what else?
And on and on. And on. About 14 states, Pat, were within six points or so in the polls.
But those battlegrounds are where the fight was, and everybody went to make sure that North Carolina and Florida and these other states, that either candidate won them all. That meant they could get the magic 270 votes on the electoral map. Now, Trump has confused people. And John, what do you see? This thing is breaking down. The AP has just called Florida. So he's won Florida. They won't call North Carolina, even though Burr has won the Senate. And Pennsylvania, for example, was a battleground, and that's not settled yet. So in Ohio, they've called for...
Ohio's been called for Trump.
For Trump. Mm-hmm. So how do you figure the electoral map right now?
Well, there's the Ohio results. You can see 53 to 43 right now. The map is looking a lot like we talked about on the program the other day, Pat, where you still have you still have North Carolina outstanding, but Trump is leading. If that goes red, then we move westward a little bit, and this is what we didn't expect. Michigan and Wisconsin are currently colored pink on the maps temporarily because he's been leading there. Iowa is still out. Colorado is looking like it's going to go for Clinton, as is New Mexico. But the bottom line of it is, Pat, if Georgia continues to come through and North Carolina on the East Coast, then and Maine and New Hampshire are still outstanding in the New England states, then you've got a situation where Trump has more than one way to get to 270, and he's ahead in the electoral count.
He's ahead. Nobody thought Wisconsin, and they weren't thinking Michigan. I've campaigned in Michigan. I knew Michigan. If the folks in Wayne County, in Detroit, do not come out to vote in large numbers, then Grand Rapids and the other states, counties, are more conservative. And he's talking to blue-collar workers, and they resonate to his message that we're going to give you jobs. And it looks like Michigan is now trending towards Trump, as is Wisconsin.
Yeah, there's still a lot of votes to be counted there, and we can't be sure. But the point is that there are still ways for Trump to get to 270, and it's looking more and more, like it's a real possibility.
All right, let's talk New Hampshire. He's ahead. How many?
He's been ahead by a narrow margin in New Hampshire.
That's 3.
He was leading in Maine before we sat down here on the air.
Right.
So there's your New Hampshire, 49-46 at the current count. And he's been leading in Maine. Don't know if he still is, but he could still win an electoral vote with one. Now Clinton is up, but there is one congressional district that he could win. If he wins that district, he gets one electoral vote.
Well, now, Nevada is kind of up in the air. What's the word on that?
Nevada, the results had been slow in coming in before we got on the air. It's probably a pretty close race right now, I would say. And I know they don't have anything definitive yet. Nevada's still too close to call for sure.
Well, Pennsylvania is up in the air.
It's trending Clinton. It's trending Clinton.
Well, when Philadelphia comes in, there's so many Democrats in Philadelphia.
Now this has narrowed, though, Pat. 49-47. Pennsylvania was a good 8 or 9, 10 points, but this is narrowed. So probably the reason they haven't called it yet.
Okay. Well, what is the path for the 270 for John with what he's already got?
Well, if North Carolina and Georgia come in, which we expect probably will happen, those two get filled in red, If Iowa comes in, he was trailing a bit, but most of the vote count had come from Des Moines and the college towns. If he pulls off Iowa, Georgia, North Carolina, and New Hampshire, then he's just got to get Nevada to go over. But these Wisconsin and Michigan, if they hold up, then he doesn't need Nevada out west. He doesn't need Maine in the upper, northeastern corner.
Before the election swings to the west, which is blue all the way up and down the west coast,
exactly,
California and Oregon, and
the polls just closed in California, and I imagine they've already called it for Clinton. I think I saw that on our map.
So she's counting on that, but Trump would have the win of the 270 electoral votes before it even goes to the west coast.
Yes, and he could still get the 3 votes in Alaska at 1 in the morning, but he may not need them.
Well, he's getting Utah too, isn't he? That's what.
Probably so. He's had a narrow lead over Evan McMullin.
All right, so real quick, the Senate, and then we're going to go some other things. The Senate, you were thinking they might even lose 3 seats.
Yeah, I projected 2 seats, and they've lost 1 at this point, according to the reckoning that I've got.
They held on to 1 in North Carolina. Of course, Johnny Isaacson in Georgia.
There were a lot of non-toss-ups, but among the toss-ups, Burr has won re-election in North Carolina. Blunt was leading in Missouri. Kelly Ayotte has been leading in New Hampshire, and Evan Bayh was defeated. So Young is the new senator-elect from Indiana, and that was an important hold. So right now a net loss of 1, and it could go 2 or 3. Toomey is down in Pennsylvania. So
John, this is a historic election, isn't it? It is a sweep, and the pundits are going out of their minds. The futures for the various stock indices are down 300 or 400 points. Gold is up, futures are down, and the people are freaking out. All right. Well, our political correspondent David Brody is with us now, the CBN News Bureau in Washington. And David, what can you tell us about the evangelical vote? Trump was counting on the evangelicals. What do you know?
Well, that's right, Pat. He was counting on evangelicals, and I've been looking at my phone all night, Pat. I mean, I'm getting texts all night from folks within the Trump campaign and folks with the Republican National Committee, and someone just texted me from a source inside the Republican National Committee texted me, and he said, "David, we're performing way above our expectations of what we thought." And then when I asked him specifically about the evangelical vote, he said, "We're outperforming 2012, not even close." And so we're waiting for the final numbers. Some of the exit polls, Pat, we're seeing 78% nationally coming in for Donald Trump when it comes to white, born-again evangelical Christians. 78%. Pat, those are George W. Bush numbers from 2000 and 2004. I mean, those are impressive numbers. And then when you throw on the fact that it's Donald Trump, and he always has an asterisk around his name, that's even more impressive. And so that's kind of the initial feel from an evangelical perspective. If we drill down a little farther, in Florida, where he wins big tonight, the white born-again evangelical vote in Florida, you ready for this number, Pat? Right. In Florida, 85% Donald Trump wins. And why does he win? Because that panhandle up in Florida, and you know it well, Pat, it came out indeed for Donald Trump. Did Miami-Dade come out well for Hillary Clinton? Yeah, she did fine. That wasn't the issue. The issue is, or I shouldn't say the issue, well, the issue for Hillary Clinton is that Donald Trump has overperformed even among evangelicals. That's the sense tonight.
Is Florida in the bag already? Are they still debating? I mean, 99% of the votes are in, I think, from Florida. Have they called it yet?
They have called Florida for Trump. They've called Florida for Trump. And so, look, let's try to dumb all this down, if you will, or kind of narrow our focus. Donald Trump had 3 states he had to win tonight: Florida, North Carolina, and Ohio. He's won Ohio. He's won Florida. There are some projections out there that he'll win North Carolina. That's not officially been called, but it looks like he's on his way. He's up 5 points in North Carolina. Looks like he's going to win North Carolina. That's the trifecta, Pat, that he needed. And then he needed to penetrate Hillary Clinton's blue wall of states: Michigan, Wisconsin, and so on. And indeed, he's winning in Michigan, he's winning in Wisconsin. And you know what's interesting, Pat? In Michigan, which is fascinating, Macomb County, you know that county.
Yes, I
that's
do.
the Reagan Democrats out there. He's walloping her in that white, working class Reagan Democrat land, or what used to be called Reagan Democrats. He's doing very well in Michigan. So this is some of what we're seeing tonight in that Donald Trump potential victory scenario. Potential. We got some ways to go here.
You've been in touch with the Trump campaign people. What are they saying? What's Kellyanne tweeting and others? What are they saying to you?
Well, Pat, I'll read it to you directly, if you don't mind, as we kind of ad-lib our way through the show here. Kellyanne Conway just texted me about 20 minutes or so ago, and I'll read it to you. She said, here's the quote. They are buoyant inside the campaign, and here's her quote: feeling hopeful, winning mood here, watching returns with him, and we are winning. Our internal polls were right all along. That's from Kellyanne Conway, Trump's campaign manager. You know, one of the things I've experienced, Pat, on election night is when campaigns start to lose, you start to lose communication with them as well. The emails and the texts and all that stops, and they go into mourning. Instead, we're not seeing that. We might be seeing a new mourning in America, actually.
You know, the thing that's so amazing about this, the media was actually asking the Democratic Party, I think Washington Post, one of them, give us some dirt that we can print about Trump. I mean, the media was in the tank, like I cannot believe, for the opposition. And what's going to happen? The New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, tell me about it.
Yeah, well, Pat, I got to tell you, there are a couple things going on here. First of all, and this is, we'll put the word if in cap letters here, but if Trump wins tonight, there's going to be a lot of soul searching in those media organizations, not necessarily because of what they did to Trump. They're not going to look at it that way at all, though a lot of conservatives will look at it that way. But I think there's going to be a reassessing of exactly what the media landscape is and what conservative media and the liberal media and some of the lines that have been drawn will mean in the future. I think there's going to be a whole recalibration of the media in this country, win or lose by Trump. And my understanding from some sources is that there's going to be a push to really push the media, the mainstream media, in a much different direction and really come against them in ways that we haven't seen yet. It may be investigative. It may be something along those lines.
Well, Joe, we'll look forward to hearing more of you in the evening. So as things develop, let us know. Well, John Fund of National Review is with us from New York. And John, what are some of your key takeaways from this presidential race so far?
Pat, I was in London in June for the Brexit vote on the European Union. The entire political establishment and the media were convinced it couldn't possibly win. And then the people rose up in unexpected numbers and changed Britain's history. We may be in a similar situation here. Donald Trump has outperformed what people expected he would get among evangelicals, among working class voters. He's closed the gender gap more than people expected. He's gotten the same or slightly better percentage of the Hispanic vote that Mitt Romney did, despite all of the incendiary rhetoric. The Senate is probably going to hold Republican. They may lose a couple of seats, but it looks like they will retain control. The House losses are minimal. This may be an historic election in which we see the realignment of the country. College-educated voters moving more towards Hillary Clinton and the Democrats. Non-college educated workers who've been bearing the brunt of the longest, painfully slow recovery in this country's history, 10 years, have risen up and say, we want to change. It's a question of how many have, but right now it's a majority for Trump.
You know, John, Hillary embraced some of the most radical feminist positions about abortion and things like that. On gun control, she lied. She had all that string of emails and scandals, and her husband does what he does. But the American people, I mean, the women seem to embrace her. Can you understand where they're coming from?
Well, there's, of course, an historical candidacy aspect to this. Catholics often voted for John F. Kennedy in 1960 because they wanted to be proud of having a Catholic in the White House. In 2008, Barack Obama got a lot of African-American turnout. That was an historic election. Obviously, the election of the first woman president would mean some of that. But what we're seeing is millennial women under 35, weren't that excited about Hillary. I talked to many who said, we're going to have a female president soon enough. Does it have to be this one? And, you know, Donald Trump, of course, had his own problems. I mean, he has his own tenuous relationship with the truth, and he made all kinds of problems for his own campaign. But Hillary, the Clintons were the dead weight of history. They'd been around for 30 years, and we saw with the collapse of Jeb Bush's campaign in the Republican Party, and now, of course, the underperformance of Hillary Clinton. The American people do not like political dynasties, and she's being punished in part for that.
Change. I understand a lot of people coming out of the voting booths were saying we wanted change. Is that the message that came out of this one?
Well, look, the average American household is making less in real terms now than it did 10 years ago. People are moving backwards. College costs up, healthcare costs up. The people are employed, but often with 2 jobs, part-time. And people are struggling. And what often happens after 8 years of economic stagnation, which is effectively what the Obama administration has been, people say, this isn't working, it's time to try something new. And let's face it, Hillary Clinton's plans for the future were pretty much on the same page as Barack Obama, so people weren't going to get any change from that. They were going to get a change in who was in the Oval Office, male to female, but not in real policy terms.
John, we appreciate your insight. By the way, we now have word that they're calling North Carolina for Trump. And John Waggy, could you give us how many electoral votes that gives our Mr. Trump?
Well, he's up over 200 now, I believe, and it looked like a 5-point victory ending up in North Carolina, which is really pretty astounding when you think about all the polls that came beforehand. But there's the map, 216 to 197. And so, you know, there's still some numbers on that map, especially, it's surprising to me that Georgia closed at roughly the same time, and Georgia still hasn't been called. But, you know, it may be with some slow counting of ballots or something like that. But Georgia has plenty of electoral votes, too, which is going to put him around the 230 range. You're getting that within that 270 count.
What more states are we looking at now? I mean, you see that map is almost solid red now.
Yes, and so you're looking for Arizona and Utah out west. I called Nevada for Trump as well. I don't know that he's going to get that, but if he gets Wisconsin or Michigan, he doesn't need Nevada. So you're talking Georgia, Arizona, Utah. If he picks up those 3, he's getting very, very close to the 270.
And of course, you get New Hampshire, you get a few votes from Maine.
He's leading there, and Maine is still too close to call, but the last numbers I saw, he was trailing Clinton in Maine.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's an amazing election, and we're going to be back with more. This is a special election update right after this. Well, to say the least, there's joy at the Trump headquarters tonight, and our CBN News correspondent, Abigail Robertson, is there in New York. Abby, how are the people responding to these results? What are they telling you?
Oh, they are so excited, so energized. It is a very hopeful crowd. They're handing out free Make America Great Again hats. So it is a sea of red hats in here, and they're just excited as these results keep rolling in very heavily in Trump's favor.
Well, were they optimistic about a victory before this thing started? I mean, I think some of us here figured he was going to win, but were they all expecting a victory?
Honestly, today the staffers that I spoke with were very tense. I did not get the vibe from them that they were really confident in a victory tonight. I talked to Omarosa at 7 p.m. and she described her sentiments today as on pins and needles. So before the results came in, they definitely were a little more nervous, but I mean around 8 p.m. when the first states were being called, that completely changed and now everyone's very hopeful here.
Well, Abigail, thank you. We want some more reports, so when something breaks, you let us know and give us a holler and we'll put you back on the air, okay? Let's Let's go to John Jessup at the CBN News Desk with more results. Here's John.
Thanks, Pat. Well, here is a quick update and recap of where things stand right now with the presidential race. It is the battleground states that matter so much. The most critical one tonight was for Trump in Florida, where he has pulled off a big victory. Trump has also won the key swing state of Ohio, which was essential for his chances to winning the presidency. And Trump has claimed North Carolina, too, another key state in his quest for the White House. Nationwide, Trump has been leading by nearly 2 million in the popular vote. And throughout this election season, immigration was a key issue and a divisive one that seemed to fuel voter enthusiasm. And national exit polls reveal that 2/3 of Hispanics voted for Clinton.
Voted for Hillary. I think she has the best plans to go forward with our country. Trump, he has bold plans, but I think he's a loose cannon. I don't think I want him in the White House.
Right now, I think it's very important this election as far as the Latino race, because right now we don't know what's going to happen if Donald Trump will take over this area. And our children, all our Latino kids, Afro-American kids, we're in a lot of trouble.
But after all the campaign talk on immigration this year, it turned out to be a low priority for most voters. Just 1 in 10 voters said immigration was the most important issue facing the country. Well, let's quickly turn now to the battle for control of the Senate, a key prize in this election. Heading into today, Republicans held 54 seats to Democrats' 46. So far, Democrats have picked up only 1 seat. That's in Illinois, where U.S. Congresswoman Tammy Duckworth, an Iraq War veteran, has defeated Republican incumbent Mark Kirk. But in Florida, Republican Senator Marco Rubio has been reelected, fighting off Democratic Congressman Patrick Murphy. And in North Carolina, Republican Richard Burr has been reelected to the Senate, defeating Deborah Ross. In Indiana, Republicans are holding on to an embattled seat, which was held by retiring Senator Dan Coates, and that GOP Congressman Todd Young beat former Democratic Senator and Governor Evan Bayh. Pat, that was a huge and crushing defeat for Democrats.
It's absolutely key. We haven't heard what Roy Blunt's doing in Missouri. I don't know if we got any report on that, but I suspect he'll take it.
He was ahead. I don't know that it's been called. And also Kelly Ayotte in New Hampshire was leading. Yeah. There's the numbers now on Blunt. He's still leading. Yeah, well,
I think we could pretty much figure he'll be in, and I think Kelly Ayotte they've spent an enormous amount of money on that New Hampshire race, a huge amount of money.
Yeah,
but
had to buy into the Boston market and everything.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Well, David Brody is back with us from Washington. And David, what have you learned since we last talked?
Well, a couple of things. The race is tightening in Pennsylvania. We're within 2 points, actually, in Pennsylvania. And Michigan is now much tighter, less than 1% now between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And so, look, I think where we're at right now is that the Rust Belt is the key to Donald Trump's victory here, Pat. He's got to win either Michigan or Wisconsin. As a matter of fact, I just got this in from, let's call him an evangelical organizer, one of the main ones around the country. I said, how are you feeling right now? He said, nervous. He still needs Michigan or Wisconsin. And I think the feeling, why he's thinking that exactly is because this time around, Arizona, as John Waggy has said, Arizona's in play. And Georgia's still in play, technically. And so once Arizona and Georgia go into the Republican column, if they do, then all of a sudden it feels a little bit better. But right now, you've got to protect and make sure you cover your home turf. And I think that's what's going on right now, Pat.
Well, tell us about the enthusiasm for Trump voters versus the organization of Clinton.
It's been fascinating. You know, Jenna Browder and I, you've seen these reports on the 700 Club. We've been around the country, battleground states everywhere. We've been to Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania. We can go on. And in every one of those states, Trump-Pence signs everywhere. And we're going to liberal counties. We're going to conservative counties. In liberal counties, you don't see many signs. In conservative counties, they're everywhere. And so that's what it's been. Look, Donald Trump is the change candidate. There's no doubt about it. And when you're the change candidate, you typically win a presidential election. Barack Obama was the change candidate in 2008. He won, and of course, on in 2012 as well. However, Hillary Clinton does have very good organization on the ground. So it is change versus organization. What's going to win out tonight? Or I should say enthusiasm versus organization. What's going to win out tonight? It seems like enthusiasm is starting to win out, or at least give Hillary Clinton a very, very hard time. I will point out Cuyahoga County up in Ohio. That was one of those counties we were looking at. That's near Cleveland. It's in the Cleveland area. Hillary Clinton had to do very well there tonight. A lot of African-American votes up there. She won 67% of the vote. But guess what, Pat? Donald Trump he had about 30% of that vote, which is pretty impressive for Donald Trump. Once again, the candidate with an asterisk, because, boy, he said some things that have been pretty provocative. And so the fact that Hillary Clinton's polling 67%, where Barack Obama polled roughly 70% in that county, every single one of those percentage points makes a big difference.
Thank you, David. I just learned that Ron Johnson in Wisconsin has held on to that seat.
Yes, and that's going to make it really pretty difficult for Democrats to take control
Russ
of the Senate.
Feingold was one who supported the so-called Obamacare, and they slammed him on that really hard.
They did, and they also slammed him on being a lobbyist in Washington, that he wasn't in touch with the voters of Wisconsin. And you know, the Scott Walker network apparently has prevailed one more time in Wisconsin, and we'll see if it can do it in the presidential race,
right.
too.
But am I understanding now from the math, Trump needs just one more key state to take him over?
You know, as David said, he's got to have Georgia and Arizona. Those were two that were supposed to be locked down.
I can't understand Georgia. It makes no sense.
I don't know what's going on there.
Johnny Iveson wins going away, and yet Georgia is not voting for Trump.
Yeah, well, and after those two, then I had given Nevada to Trump, and there's no guarantee that would happen. Right. And then he would need New Hampshire and one congressional seat in Maine, and that would put him over the top. But he's also got Michigan, and he's also got Wisconsin at this point.
Would it be crazy if it's the tie and he goes into the House of Representatives? I mean, that's great. Jay Sekulow of the American Center for Law and Justice is with us. And Jay, what impact did this FBI thing have on the election, do you think?
I'm sorry, lost you there, Pat. Go ahead.
I want to know what impact this FBI, what the Comey emails and all the stuff that he's done the last month or two, the last few weeks, what impact did it have on the election?
Becomes the president tonight. The lesson for that is going to be this. Don't put your server, when you're the Secretary of State, in your basement, because I think that the cumulative impact of that entire scandal has been significant. It's been significant in states there were all these reports and all the polling data, which was obviously incorrect. But I think there has been a cumulative impact. Look, as John Waggy just said, it's not over yet for Donald Trump. He doesn't have it locked in. He's got to win Wisconsin or Michigan or maybe Pennsylvania. But the fact of the matter is, I think there was a cumulative toll on the whole email scandal. And although I strenuously, and I've said it on a broadcast with you, and you and I have talked about this, I think what the FBI did and the way they handled it was absolutely incorrect. It's not the way it's supposed to work in the United States. Announcing you're not going to prosecute, then you might be prosecuting, then you're not going to prosecute. I think the cumulative impact of all of this and the trustworthy factor became a lot for Hillary Clinton to have to overcome. And we'll know in a little bit if she did or not. But right now, I think there's been a real impact on this. And the fact that the Republicans, you and I talked about this yesterday or the day before, the fact that the Republicans may well hold on to the Senate, it looks like they're going to, I think that is directly related to this lack of trust and this concern over these email scandals and what the FBI was doing generally. I think the American people on that, Republican, Democrat, and Independent, said, wait a minute, this isn't the way it's supposed to work. And that impacted the Republicans in the Senate races.
I'm sure if Trump wins, as he looks like he's going to win, and he becomes President Trump, he's going to put in a new Attorney General. Do you see any litigation against the sitting Justice Department people for malfeasance, misfeasance, or whatever term you want to use?
Yeah. So, look, the Attorney General serves at the pleasure of the President. So if Donald Trump is President-elect, gets sworn into office, becomes President of the United States, he picks an Attorney General. I could tell you it won't be Loretta Lynch, obviously. The FBI director's term extends, as you know, past the presidential, so he's got 8 more years left, James Comey. Although I suspect the pressure on him is going to be pretty great because he's done an awful job the way he's handled this. I mean, a horrendous job, Pat. I mean, this is just not the way the justice system is supposed to work in the United States. Having said all of that, I think that, look, you got a Supreme Court vacancy that's there. You got a Justice Department that's in complete meltdown, an FBI that I don't think knows, right now who's running what. I think that if Donald Trump becomes the president of the United States, he's got a job to do to clean out the FBI and the Justice Department and get new leadership in there to right the ship. By the way, if it was Hillary Clinton, I think she'd have the same responsibility. I think that what's happened to the Justice Department is outrageous and the American people shouldn't tolerate it. And obviously it's having an impact on the election.
Harry Reid played what was called the nuclear option. It used to be that we had a filibuster, and they had to get a supermajority of the senators.
Right.
There's nothing in the Constitution that provides for that, and of course, he put in a number of liberal circuit court judges. They biased consent of the Senate over Obama appointees. And they got away with it. Do you think Mitch McConnell and the guys if we have a close race in relation to the next Supreme Court justice, that Mitch would have the same nuclear option, or is he going to play nice?
I don't even think he has to. He doesn't exercise. They've exercised the nuclear option. Just don't reverse it. I mean, you're fighting for at that point, you're fighting for the future of the Supreme Court. The president's going to have. I mean, look, this isn't the hypothetical vacancy. There is a vacancy, and it's not just any vacancy. It's the vacancy of Antonin Scalia. So the fact is, I think the reality is that the Republicans, if they maintain the control of the Senate, it looks like they're going to, are going to have to. They're going to be assertive. I think there's no question about that. I think in a sense they'll be emboldened by the fact that they were able to survive an onslaught that was really aimed against them, as far as just the sheer math looked like it was not going to go their way, just with the number of seats you had to defend, and apparently they carried the day.
What is the ACLJ doing? Who are you suing? You've got a suit against the Justice Department and one against the IRS. What are they?
A number of them. One against the Department of Justice as it relates to the meeting between former President Clinton and Loretta Lynch on the airplane. We filed a Freedom of Information Act request to the FBI and the Department of Justice. The FBI said they're looking for documents. The Justice Department says nothing. So we know that somebody's looking for something, but it wasn't the Justice Department, so we've gone to federal court. And let me just remind everybody that, look, it doesn't matter Republican or Democrat. You cannot let uncontrolled bureaucrats control the destiny of the laws in the United States of America. We showed that when we challenged in a major lawsuit the Internal Revenue Service, and just about a month ago we received a unanimous decision from the Court of Appeals saying what the Obama administration's IRS did was wrong, incorrect as a matter of law, and reverse the district court judge. So we know what it is to take on government agencies, and you got to do it to really make sure justice, liberty, freedom, First Amendment values are protected. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
Jay, thank you so much. Well, what Donald Trump has said, he's going to reverse a whole lot of executive orders, the whole group of them, as soon as he takes office. We have General Jerry Boykin with us right now. Excuse me, Stephen Moore is with us. And Stephen, the markets are plunging on account of the news that Trump will win, but how do you view his economic policies? They certainly are pro-growth, it seems like to me.
Well, Pat, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a Cubs fan. And we won the World Series on Wednesday, and now Donald Trump is going to win the presidency. This might be the best week of my life. But anyway, look, I've worked with Donald Trump on the economic plan. I think that, first of all, these market jitters, look, Trump is talking about change, right, Pat? I mean, I just heard you talking to John Fund and others about this. Trump is a change agent. He is going to shake things up and rattle the cages in Washington. And Wall Street isn't so happy about that, right? They like everything to stay the same. But I would say this, that I think if Donald Trump wins and he puts in place his economic agenda of cutting taxes, pro-America energy policy, putting coal miners back to work and using all the oil and gas we have, repealing Obamacare, those kinds of things, I think you're going to see a big boom in this country. I really do. I think the jobs are going to come back. And then, of course, the stock market. One other quick thing, Pat. I'm old enough to remember when Ronald Reagan won in 1980. Now, I'm not saying Donald Trump is Ronald Reagan, but the stock market didn't like Ronald Reagan very much at the beginning. And then when his policies took hold, as you recall, we saw one of the biggest bull market expansions in American history.
Has Trump set in place the economic policy advisors? I know you'll be one of them, but who are the others who he'll be relying on for economic policy?
Well, he's got a great team around him. My buddy Larry Kudlow was very involved in the tax plan. Wouldn't it be wonderful to see somebody like Larry Kudlow as the Treasury Secretary? A lot of really great entrepreneurs, people like Wilbur Ross and others. I think it's going to be a great economic team. But I'll say this, that the most important thing, and I think one of the reasons Donald Trump has done as well as he has so far tonight, is he's a businessman. And we've had career politicians for too long in this country. And this is a guy who knows how to meet a payroll. He knows how to pay the bills. He knows how to, put people to work. And I think that was a strong attraction, especially to voters. And can I make one other quick point, Pat, because I think this is really critical. If Donald Trump holds on and wins, and I saw, by the way, that Wisconsin was just called for Donald Trump. That's a big win for him. If he wins this election, the Republican Party will be a very different party from what it's been over the last 25 years. I believe it's going to become a working man's party where you have blue-collar workers coming into the Republican Party and saying, look, we want good policies that create good-paying jobs in America, and we want to put America first.
Boy, thank you so much. Well, listen, we've just got not only, we understand that they've just called...
Georgia went
Georgia's come in, and you said Wisconsin has come, so
that's without Wisconsin, 232 to 209.
232 to 209 are the numbers of the Electoral College, and it's pretty much...
There's your Wisconsin totals now, too, 49 to 46.
Unbelievable. And Michigan is still on the cusp, so it's coming. Well, Trump has now won Georgia, and David Brody, what can you tell us about where we are now?
We're on the cusp of a Donald Trump victory, and I can tell you right now, Pat, I just want to read you what the Drudge Report is. This is the Drudge Report headline. Here it is: Trump on the verge of presidency, world in shock. That's what that's the Drudge Report tonight. He's done what he needed to do, Pat. He's won North Carolina, he's won Ohio, he's won Florida. Those were the three that we talked about. He has penetrated the blue wall in Wisconsin. He might penetrate it even more. If he wins Arizona, that's 11. John Waggy can help me with the math here a little bit, but that's 11. I'll put him at 243, and we got Utah and some others. So he's well on his way. He's well on his way.
Well, it looks like, not only the shock, I would think some of the editors of the New York Times are going to be jumping out of windows. That's what happened during the Depression.
Well, Pat, yeah, I believe smelling salts are in order tonight for the mainstream media who will be potentially passed out on the streets of New York and Washington. I don't think there's any question about that. If this happens, once again, if in capital letters. Hey, Pat, very important here. I want to point out to what Donald Trump has done in this election compared to what Mitt Romney had done in 2012, and there's some numbers here, and I won't go through all of these numbers, but look, here's the thing. In the Hispanics tonight, nationally, here's what the exit polls show with Hispanics. Romney, first of all, in 2012 had 27% of the Hispanic vote. Donald Trump tonight, 29% of the Hispanic vote. George Bush was at around 40%, which is a high watermark. But the fact that Donald Trump is doing 29% regarding Hispanics tonight is pretty remarkable. Because if you look a little bit more at the numbers, here's another one. With the women vote tonight, nationally, Trump got 42% of the woman vote tonight. Mitt Romney got 44%. Donald Trump down only 2 points to Mitt Romney with the women vote after all of this. Pretty fascinating.
Well, thank you, David, and I appreciate what you're doing. John, have you got an update on the...
Well, I was just going to say, Pat, Wisconsin is the first state to go against my predictions.
Okay.
And why it's significant, because I've been keeping track of it in my mind. Wisconsin, if it's truly a Trump victory, means that Trump doesn't need Nevada to go over the top. He would have, if he takes Arizona and Utah, which we're expecting him to do that, he wouldn't need it. He's got it with Wisconsin. So that's how close we're getting now. So.
Well, folks, it's been an exciting day. I'm telling you, people are just giddy at what's going on because it's going to be a dramatic change in the way our government does business. And those who've been suffering under the malaise of the current administration and the low GDP of 2.1% or something like that, things are going to change. And, you know, under Roosevelt, they used to sing "Happy Days Are Here Again." Well, I don't know if they'll be singing that yet, but they ought to be. Well, we'll be back with more of this special edition of the 700 Club right after this.
Welcome back to the 700 Club. Once again, we have an update and a recap of where the key races stand right now. Donald Trump has shocked pollsters, winning key swing states of Florida, Ohio, and North Carolina. And we have reports just now coming in that he has also won Georgia, and Fox News reports that he's likely the winner in Wisconsin and Iowa. Exit polls show the gender gap was a big deal in this election, perhaps the biggest gender gap in as many as 4 decades. Non-college educated white men flocked to Donald Trump, giving him a big boost that may have cut into Clinton's advantage with women. With the historic chance to elect the first woman to the White House, women supported Clinton by a double-digit margin. Many women, though, still weren't sold on her candidacy.
I voted third party today because I do not agree with the principles that the mainstream candidates were espousing. And I really want our children to see a peaceful, democratic process where free speech is allowed.
It didn't matter to me whether they were male or female. I just wanted the best person for the job.
It makes me proud to be a woman. Knowing that there might actually be a woman as a first president, I think it's a little underrated. It has been, at least, because it's like a really big deal, and everyone's sitting here talking about all these other awful things when they should be talking about that.
Meanwhile, it looks like Republicans are holding on to control of the Senate. They've claimed another very contentious seat. Republican Ron Johnson of Wisconsin holding on to re-election to the Senate there. Pat, not just the Senate, but the House.
Amazing. Well, with us now is a dear friend, retired Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, one of the great military heroes. He was Deputy Undersecretary of Defense under the second President Bush. He spent 36 years in the military. He's now Executive Vice President of the Family Research Council. General, God bless you.
Well, God bless you, Pat. It's good to be with you.
This is a great evening, isn't it?
It is. Let me ask you a question. When you came into the studios this evening, did you have any doubt that Trump was going to win this thing?
No, I knew he was going to win. I knew all along. I never once said it would be the other way around.
Well, you and I were talking off camera here. The media lives in a bubble.
They do.
They don't understand the real world. And I think that what Donald Trump represents is not only the frustration that so many Americans are feeling, but the fact that Americans want to reestablish the founding values of this nation, generally speaking.
Well, you know, as a military man, there were some of these leaders who had been the secretary of this, that, and the other under previous administrations who came up for Hillary Clinton. Why would they do that after what she did with her emails? I mean, she violated national security. Generals have been court-martialed for doing much less things than what she did.
Yeah, and I know most of those people that did that.
Yeah.
And let me tell you that they are very much establishment people. They believe, and I've actually had a couple of them say to me, we can endure 4 years of Hillary, but we can't stand 4 years of Donald Trump because he's going to destroy the Republican Party. Well, yeah, he is.
Yeah.
He is, and watch. I think he's going to see a victory tonight, and I think a lot of things are going to change, and those are the very people that are going to be real unhappy with the changes that they're going to see.
What should be done with defense? What if you were advising him, and maybe you will be, what would you tell him?
On the 3rd of October, a large group of retired, mostly generals and admirals. We met with Donald Trump. We had some other ranks there as well, and that was the event there in Washington where all the media took away from this hour-and-a-half meeting was that Trump said people with PTSD were weak, which he never said, but that was the meeting I'm talking about. But we asked him substantive questions. And we also recommended to him, first of all, Mr. Trump, you've got to go in and you've got to start all over again. You've got to get rid of the top echelons of leadership in the military. You don't go fire them all overnight, but you've got to ease them out and bring in some warriors. Some people with the warrior values, the warrior ethos that understand what winning wars is about. Then you've got to rely on them to develop a strategy to defeat this global jihad that we're dealing with and we're going to deal with until we do stand up against it. And then you've got to go to the Congress and you've got to get the Congress to restore the budgets of our military to a reasonable level that will allow them to rebuild their force structure and to equip them to the extent that they need to be. And then finally, you've got to stop the social experiments because the social experiments ultimately translate into a lot of wasted training time, a lot of wasted preparation time, and an all-out assault on people of faith because people of faith are being forced to accept and even celebrate things that they find objectionable according to their individual faith. So we've talked to him about that, and frankly, he's pledged to do those things.
He's pledged to do it?
Yes, he has. To us in that meeting there that day, he's pledged to do that.
You think they really need to clean house in the Defense Department and in the Joint Chiefs and that level of people?
That's the leadership of our military.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's who you're talking about.
And look at the situation. You know, Pat, in fact, I was talking to one of your folks here tonight. If you want to know how far our military has degraded, you look at the videos of Jeremiah Denton in 1967 after 10 months of torture. They finally got him to go on camera. And while he was on camera making a statement, he was blinking the word torture in Morse code. And then in 2016, we had 2 patrol boats taken off the coast of Iran. And within 3 hours, the commander, a Naval Academy graduate, was looking in the camera saying, this is all our fault, and we want to apologize to the Iranians, and we want to thank them for their hospitality. Now, how could our military have gone from the Jeremiah Dentons to this kind of lack of a warrior ethos? That's how bad our military has declined.
Well, the rules of engagement are such, I understand that people go out and sorties and they are forced to come back and without dropping their ordnance because there's a rule of engagement then put in by some civilian in Washington.
Rules of engagement are developed by lawyers. And these lawyers are non-risk takers. These lawyers are not about winning. They are about protecting the administration, protecting the commanders, and so forth. And our troops are really frustrated. So I think that the next commander-in-chief has got to rely on, again, his senior officers, but he's got to put the right officers in there. He's got to put the right people there that he can trust, that will give him reliable information and recommendations, and then he's got to let them fight to win. We do not have a winning strategy. In fact, we don't have a strategy, but we don't have a winning attitude. And America's military has one single responsibility, and that is to fight and win the nation's wars. We've got to get back to the idea of winning against our adversaries.
I remember MacArthur said this, no
substitute for victory.
No substitute for victory.
That's right.
What do you think about, some of these restrictions, for example, on chaplains and what they can do and the prayers and things that Mickey Weinstein, or whatever his name was, just tied the Air Force in knots. I couldn't believe what they let him get away with.
That's right. And see, what Donald Trump has to do now is reverse the paradigm. Because what has happened is they've allowed this guy to have so much influence that if he makes a phone call, the default position is, well, we'll do what he wants. Well, that's got to change. In other words, what's got to happen is their first thought is not, I want to do what this guy does so he doesn't say bad things about me or he didn't file a lawsuit. What they have to think is, no, I got to protect the religious liberties of the men and women that I'm responsible for. And I think we're starting to see that already happen, because I think that there is a general sense in the military that Donald Trump just might be the next commander-in-chief. And he's probably not going to be as tolerant of that kind of thing, the suppression of faith, the infringement on the First Amendment rights of our young men and women. They're the ones that protect those rights. And by the way, Ash Carter, the Secretary of Defense, announced last week that he is forming a speakers bureau. I mean, why? And he explained that he was going to send some celebrities or well-known people out across America to try and encourage people to come into the military. You know why? Because they're having trouble meeting their recruiting goals. You know why? Because moms and dads all across America are saying, no, I don't want my son or daughter to serve in this military, because they have to check their faith at the door, or they have to put up with, tolerate, even celebrate things that they don't agree with or they find objectionable. So they're having a recruiting problem now. Donald Trump will turn that around.
Well, that's the result of this election. They have great consequences. Jerry, thank you so much.
Sir.
We love
Great being with you. God bless you.
God bless you. You're watching a special we've got on the election. It's one of the most historic elections in the history of America, and we're watching it as we do live studies. But let's go over to John Jessup for an update.
Thanks, Pat. More key races to report at this late hour. In the nation's highest profile gubernatorial race, Republican Governor Pat McCrory is holding on to the lead after facing a strong challenge from Democratic Attorney General Roy Cooper. The race became a referendum on North Carolina's conservative shift under McCrory, highlighted by a battle over bathroom safety with a law that directs transgender people to use public restrooms matching the gender of their birth certificates. Cooper vowed to repeal that law if elected. Pat, back to you.
One more example of what we're seeing because of this election. Well, our CBN News White House correspondent Jennifer Wishon is with us from Washington. And Jennifer, isn't it odd for a president to campaign as much as we've seen President Obama campaigning for Hillary this year?
It really is, Pat. You know, in recent history, we haven't seen sitting presidents campaign as much as he has. You think about George W. Bush. John McCain in 2008 really saw him as a liability. We didn't see Bill Clinton campaigning with Al Gore. But really, the president has been the strongest surrogate that Hillary Clinton could ask for, because even though a majority of Americans, more than 60% of Americans, think that the country is moving in the wrong direction under the leadership of President Obama, he personally is pretty popular. His approval rating is hovering at about 56%. Pat, he's actually more popular today than he was 4 years ago when he was reelected president. And so Hillary Clinton needed him to go after millennial voters, to go after black voters who weren't feeling very enthusiastic about her. But as we're seeing tonight, I'm not sure that he was able to really battle that enthusiasm gap. I can tell you the scene here at the White House. President Obama is here. He's been here all day. We assume that he's watching the returns come in. It's been pretty quiet, but there is a growing, building crowd here outside the gate. And off and on, we're hearing the crowd chant Black Lives Matter. So we may have an interesting situation here as the night goes on, as you've been saying, historic election results come in.
Well, Jennifer, I know he's talking about his legacy being trashed by Trump, because Trump is going to turn back. He put in, as I recall, about 2,600 executive orders dealing with all kinds of regulations, or involved with about $500 billion. Have they responded to the fact that that stuff is going to get reversed under Trump?
Well, the president was very clear on the campaign trail. He said, look, a Donald Trump presidency will insult my legacy. He knows this historic two-term president who, as you know, Pat, has fundamentally changed the nation. He has changed our culture. He has changed America's standing in the world. that's all gone, basically, if Donald Trump wins. If Donald Trump wins, he has a clear mandate to reverse all of that. So this was very personal for the president.
Well, Jennifer, you keep it up, and we look forward to some of your excellent reports from the White House coming up. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap up our election special. John Waggy's here. What keys here for the Trump and Clinton to win tonight? Anything more?
Well, Pat, it's the same as it's been. Arizona and Utah are still holding out. I really expect that both of those are going to go to Trump. And if that's done, then you've got Nevada. It looks like Utah just turned red on us right now, so that means Utah has gone for Trump already. So he can get any combination of Nevada, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Maine, New Hampshire. He's that close that he doesn't need more than one or two of those states to put him over the top.
Right. Well, David Brody, we talked about this earlier. How would a President Trump get along with Congress?
Well, you know, Pat, he's always been a negotiator. He's been a dealer. You know, if you read his book, The Art of the Deal, it's all about leverage. That's the word he uses all the time. I mean, look what he just did recently. Remember when he said whether or not he'd honor the results of the election? He says, I'll let you know. I'll get back to you. And a lot of people said, you've got to be kidding me. But in Trump's world, it's all about leverage. Why give away the store when you're still negotiating? So I think that's what we're going to see from a potential President Trump, if it does indeed happen. I've been doing qualifiers all night, Pat. One last thing, that evangelical vote is in 81% for Donald Trump nationally tonight with evangelicals compared to 78% for Mitt Romney.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
John Fund, real quick, your last thoughts on this evening. What do you think?
Should Donald Trump be declared the winner, it is an earthquake this country will not forget for decades. This will be the end of the Republican Party establishment as we know it, and it will be the end of the Clinton legacy and dynasty, which has been with us for 30 years. And it will mean, as in Britain and in other countries around the world, the people have risen up and said, we are tired of our leaders, we want change, we want a new path, and now it's up to Donald Trump to prove his critics wrong that he can indeed be, quote, presidential.
John, thank you for your insight. That's all the time we've got. Well, that's it for our special on the 700 Club. Join us again tomorrow for an in-depth look at the election, where Washington and America goes from here. I'm Pat Robertson. Thanks for joining us. Good night, and God bless you.